And that's really unrealistic because life is full of surprises. So just in terms of that, stressors are always going to be coming down the pike. So it's really about managing them as opposed to getting rid of them or stopping the stress. And I would say I'll stop there and we can talk more about those things if you want, but those would be three things that come to mind about what we maybe get wrong, or to put it another way, how we might rethink the issue of stress and getting through these big challenging situations.
So I love what you said. And I love that, the focus is not on stopping the stress or managing the stress, because sometimes the stressor is going to be there. Like, I don't know, climate issues, a health issue. You can't just stop it. But what you can do is manage yourself within that situation where you are exposed to the stressor. Welcome, fabulous coaches, to another episode of Beyond Circumstances. And today I have with me Jordan Friedman. Hey, Jordan.
Hey, Shiri, how are you?
I am well, and I'm excited to have you with me. Jordan is also known as the stress coach. So before I invite you to introduce yourself, I'm just going to say a few words about how I met you. And I met you when I was co-leading the ICF Health and Wellness Community of Practice with the fabulous Ellen Co-Chair. And she had come across your name and she watched some of your videos and she said, we have to have this guy on. So we invited you to talk about stress and burnout and chronic stress and debunk some myths. And oh my God, you took my breath away. And I've been dealing with stress for many years, and still what you brought to the space, first of all, the audience was like, people were amazed. People came up with a lot of added value. And I just fell in love. And when I started thinking about a guest list for this podcast, I said, okay, I need to contact Jordan. And when you said yes, I was like, yay. So welcome, Jordan.
Thank you. I said yes right away because I love that you focus on this topic. I love the work that you do. And thank you for your nice comments. It's nice to hear, because as a coach, as a trainer, as an educator, one does a lot of work, and videos and podcasts and writing things takes a long time. So it's nice to hear that some things land.
Yes, they do. So for those who don't know you yet, Jordan, please say a few words about who you are, what you do, where you come from, anything that you want to share.
Yeah, I live in New York City, where I am right now. So just a warning about loud noises that might come through the open windows of my office. And I've lived in New York for many years. Had the rare opportunity when I was an undergrad at the University of Maryland outside of Washington to take a stress management course, not a workshop, not a one-off training, but a full semester academic course that was recommended to me by a doctor in the health service at Maryland, where I found myself first year complaining about a lot of sort of physical digestion issues. And he gave me some medication and said, I think you're really stressed and it might be good for you to take this course on campus. And I thought I don't know, I didn't get what he was saying. I was 18 years old. And when you're 18, at least back then, we didn't talk about stress so much. We didn't talk about mental health like we do today. And so I felt strange, and it felt weird to me that I was going to go to this weird stress management course where we were probably going to burn incense and sit cross-legged and chant. And so just wasn't really into that. But I had heard good things about the course. It was a rarity. Maryland was one of the only schools at the time, this is in the 80s, that had such an academic offering and more than just that one course. And I went, and the first day, it was like the door to the rest of my life, to a different life, was open for me, because in fact, I was very stressed, even though I didn't quite put that label on it. 8 years earlier, the largest brain tumor ever discovered was found in my head. So that's when I was 10 years old. And that's a whole story that we can certainly talk more about, and an important part of why I do what I do. I had a couple of brain surgeries. I was nearly blind for a few years. My sight did improve, but it stopped at a certain point. I still have a visual impairment now. I actually have brain damage because my optic nerves are damaged, and they are part of your brain, not part of your eyes. So, that caused a lot of stress for me, and struggle for many years with getting through school, with driving, but really I shouldn't have been driving, about, my relationships, about seeking help or being embarrassed about seeking help. So I got all the way to an independent life in college, and I just sort of crashed. So that's where the symptoms came from, the stress came from. And I went to this course, and the first day in class, I learned a technique that I still teach today. Maybe we'll get a chance to do that during this call. And I still remember it. I was sitting there in class, and I thought, wow, stress does not have to be a nonstop part of life. It's okay not to be stressed. It's okay to take a deep breath, which is essentially what we did. Anyway, fast forward, I took more courses. I loved my professors. I was asked to be a teaching assistant in a couple of the first classes that I had been a student in. So for the rest of my undergrad experience, I was, full in on stress reduction and teaching. It was an incredible opportunity to be able to stand in front of a lecture hall of students and be able to teach the techniques and talk about stress. And so then, to connect New York to it, I graduated. I wanted to move to a place that was super calm and super easy to chill in. So I chose New York City.
Of course.
And in fact, as the Frank Sinatra song sort of goes, if you can manage stress there, you can manage stress anywhere. There's truth to that. So I sort of, I certainly know how to manage my New York stress, I think, not all of the time. And I did some other work, but I always wanted to go back to stress reduction. Still in the 90s, we're talking about not what it is today. But I did go to graduate school at NYU for public health and health education. And then I had the incredible opportunity of going to Columbia University to work in their health education program, and work on an incredible website, which some listeners and viewers may know, called Go Ask Alice. Uh, I got to hone and sharpen my stress reduction skills. I eventually became director of health education at Columbia for about 10 years, and sort of managed all health promotion for students as well as some staff on our different campuses. And then I left Columbia in 2004 and just started doing a lot of what I was doing there on my own for companies and for other universities and for individuals. And here I am today, still doing that. And I doubt that I would be doing this if it hadn't been for the brain tumor. Am I really happy that I had the brain tumor? Well, we can talk about that too, but I had it. So I have to, manage, my past and
Yep.
my emotions around it and my struggles. And here I am.
Thank you for sharing that. So usually we have this icebreaker, but why don't we do that little exercise that you mentioned and then kind of deep dive into circumstances, going beyond that, the relationship distress? Lead us.
Great. Yeah, so I call it quick calm. It is essentially deep diaphragmatic breathing, and it can be used anywhere with your eyes open or closed. And it really, just to tell you the purpose, it's designed to calm one down quickly. That's the name. When you're feeling suddenly stressed or anxious or overwhelmed, out of control, it just takes a couple of minutes. So why don't I lead you through it? You listening and watching, you don't have to look at anything, do anything. You can just follow my directions. So you start simply by closing your eyes if you're comfortable doing so, and just breathe normally. You don't have to think about anything, do anything else, just be. And what I'll have you do is I'll count to 3, and I'll have you take a deep breath in and hold the breath and think to yourself, I am warm. And then I'll have you exhale and think I am calm. Again, I'll lead you through it so you don't have to memorize that. Okay, just breathe normally for a moment. And 3, 2, 1. Take a deep breath in through your nose and hold and think to yourself, I am. And exhale as if you're blowing through a straw and think to yourself, I am calm. And just keep your eyes closed and breathe normally again and again. 3, 2, 1, deep breath in through your nose and think I am warm, and exhale like you're blowing through a straw and think I am calm, and breathe normally again. And we'll do it one more time. And 3, 2, 1, deep breath in and hold and think to yourself I am warm, and exhale like you're blowing through a straw and think to yourself I am calm and relaxed. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So I'd ask you, Shiri, and everybody watching and listening, how do you feel?
Well, I feel more relaxed. I'm a big believer in using breath. Regulating breath as an amazing bridge or pathway to regulate the body. So that works on me immediately.
So what's interesting about your response, and I'm sure some others have the same, is that this technique, quick calm, is designed to calm you down quickly after you're feeling suddenly stressed. I'm going to assume that in our first few minutes when I was talking about myself, when you introduced the episode, you were feeling relatively calm, not too stressed. So the fact that this minute and a half technique had an impact on you when you were already feeling relatively balanced and calm is a really good sign that it would work very well for you or anybody else who felt that difference from the time I started or we started to the time we finished the exercise. It doesn't mean that if you didn't have any reaction that it wouldn't work. In fact, it's not specifically designed to work if you're feeling calm, but it shows that just doing that kind of breathing has an impact. And if I can give the 30 seconds on why,
Yes,
when we
please.
breathe like that, any kind of breathing, whether it's this exercise, and I'm sure many have done similar breath work or breathing exercises, we're causing our diaphragm muscle in the center of the chest to go up and down. When the diaphragm is in motion like that, stimulates a nerve in the neck called the vagus nerve, which runs from your chin pretty much to just above your heart, sprays hormones on the heart, which tell the heart to slow down. Heart rate slows down, breathing rate slows down, muscle tension decreases. You tend to feel calmer. So it's in a way like texting your heart and your brain to chill a bit. Like that first day in class, when I learned this, I'd never done anything like it before. It was miraculous to me, really. And that's really sort of just a simple exercise. But when I talk with audiences or I do a training or I work with coaches or I work with individual clients, and I find that many haven't done something like this before,
Yeah.
especially if they're not in our profession, and they have a similar kind of reaction. And I teach a lot of different strategies and techniques, but over the years, I'll, connect with somebody who was in a workshop, let's say 15 years ago, and they'll say, Jordan, I don't remember anything you said in that workshop except the quick calm exercise, which I still use. So there you go.
So I want to say three things. First is, this is a perfect example of your generosity. You're generous as a person, you're generous as a trainer, you're generous as a coach. So I love that. Just goes to show who you are. The second is that if you find this interesting, and I'm addressing the audience, do some more research, the vagus nerve. You're going to find that fascinating. And the third is that, breath work seems to be a buzzword lately, and there are a lot of trainings and stuff like that. But this is breath work. It's as simple as this and as accessible. So you can do this. And if this is new to you, give your body and your system time to get used to it. It's almost like a new language, just at the beginning, even though it's so basic. And we've been breathing since the day we've been born. We were born. And still, sometimes we find that taking attention to the breath is like a new language. Let's talk about circumstances, overwhelming circumstances and crises and stuff like that. And I know You and I are both training coaches, and our niche is unique. Okay, because our coaches, the people that study with us, go and work with people in crisis. And I find many times that coaches get really stuck when they are coaching a client that all of a sudden is coming across circumstances or some kind of a crisis, and that client is overwhelmed. That client feels lost. They're in a lot of distress. They're completely dysregulated. That freaks out coaches. So my question is this: what is something that most people get wrong when trying to move beyond circumstances, whether it's themselves or whether it's supporting or coaching someone that's struggling with some unique and dramatic circumstances?
Can I say three things?
As much as you want.
They're all related in a way. I think it's really important to recognize, and I say this for myself as well, that stress is a completely normal part of life. And in fact, we couldn't survive without stress. The problem is when it becomes a nonstop way of life. So I think whatever the overwhelm might be about for a client, and maybe at the same time the coach, it's just important to remind everyone involved that this is a normal part of life, and really using stress and feeling stressed and feeling anxious and overwhelmed as a signal, as a dashboard indicator. Like if you were driving along the highway and something started flashing or a voice came out of your dashboard and said, low on fuel or radiator overheating, it's the same kind of thing. Use it to recognize that you need to get serious, or more serious perhaps, about charting a way, not necessarily out of the situation, but a way to manage yourself in it, or in some cases, the situation itself. So that's sort of one overarching headline. Another part of that is, and I talk a lot about this in my work, is that we tend to blob lots of challenges in our lives. So for example, if you're having a challenge in your marriage or relationship, or maybe in a relationship with your supervisor or a colleague, we tend to label our stressors, our challenges, as these big, bold blobs that are hard to get our arms around. I will ask the question, what are some of your stressors? What are you stressed out about? And almost always I get my job, my boss, money,
Yeah.
the situation in the world, and we could go on and on. Of course, that's going to feel overwhelming, because there's no way you can deal with all of those issues at once, and you may not be able to really ever change them in a way that's going to reduce your stress and overwhelm in the way that you want to. So an important strategy is to follow up. If you're a coach, follow up for yourself and say, okay, if this were a pie or a pizza, how would you divide it up? What are a few pieces of that bigger stress pie that are causing you to feel the way you do, feel uncomfortable, feel upset? And by doing that, I call it stress breakdown, that it's called other things as well. It tends to help people feel more in control. And when we feel more in control, we feel we have more agency, we tend to feel less stressed and more confident that we can actually affect the situation in a way that will, if not solve it or make us feel completely not stressed, will help us feel better. And then using those successes as building blocks to go to some of the other pieces and work our way around the pie. So that would be the second. First, recognizing stress is a good thing, actually.
Yep.
Secondly, doing some stress breakdown. And I would say third is that we sometimes, I think, as practitioners and as people, look at stress and happiness as a binary thing. Either we have the stress or we don't have the stress. Either we have the challenge or the challenge is gone. And that's really unrealistic, because life is full of surprises. So just on in terms of that, stressors are always going to be coming down the pike. So it's really about managing them as opposed to getting rid of them or stopping the stress. And I would say I'll stop there, and we can talk more about those things if you want, but those would be three things that come to mind about what we maybe get wrong, or to put it another way, how we might rethink the issue of stress and getting through these big challenging situations.
So I love what you said. And I love that, the focus is not on stopping the stress or managing the stress, because sometimes the stressor is going to be there. Like, I don't know, climate issues, a health issue. You can't just stop it. But what you can do is manage yourself within that situation where you are exposed to this stressor. So I'd love to hear more about that. That because it seems to me like a mindset shift from managing the stress to actually self-agency, managing myself within a situation that is stressful, and I can't stop it. Right?
Yeah, I actually really love this topic of mindset shift, and I do teach a technique. It's really one of my favorite things to do in a group setting. I call it the Mod Squad, but it's technically cognitive reappraisal and behavior change. So something else we do as humans is we get into rut thinking. Because it's a way to get through life, right? And we get used to thinking about certain situations in our lives in certain ways. So to make it more concrete, some situation at work with a colleague or a client who's really problematic, and we sort of have had experiences like that in the past, and the way we deal with it is we just push through it, and we're miserable doing it, but it's better than causing a big stink. It's better than nasty emails being sent. We just sort of we plow through it, and we do that again because it's really an automatic stress response. It enables us to sort of get through other things we need to do. Plus, and because of that, we lose perspective on other options, other ways to think about these situations, other ways to behave in them. So this Mod Squad technique I do, and this is something that you don't have to have a group together. You can just do it with friends or family. Really has people identify some of these situations that are causing them stress. Asking the question, do you think if you thought about this in a different way, or you did something different in the presence of this challenge, of this stressor, that it could reduce the stress of it, that you could get through it in a better way and have a more satisfying outcome? And really, in the hundreds and probably thousands of people I've done this with, I've never had the answer no. If somebody said no, there's nothing I can do, there's no way I can think about this, there's nothing I can do to change this, then they have to sit down, because you can't. Then you just have to deal with it, right? It's not going to change if you don't believe it's going to change, unless there are some external circumstances that make it change. So you say yes. Most people say yes, and then instead of putting the burden on you, the individual, to say, okay, great, go forth and figure out different ways to think about this and different ways to deal with it. You assemble people in your life, whether it be fellow audience members, fellow trainees, your family, friends, work people, your coach, perhaps, to say, hey, everyone, you know what Jordan's stressor is. Will you come up with different ways he might think about this stressor or behave in its presence to reduce the stress of it? So what that Mod Squad and modification of the way you think and behave, what that does that you as an individual cannot do is it creates perspective and different ways of thinking about your stressors and different ways of behaving. It takes that rut thinking and really turns it in the opposite way to give you a river of other ways that you might address this emotionally and physically, let's say. And in my experience doing this, there has never, ever been a time where there has not been at least one suggestion that the mod squad came up with, that the person who's dealing with the stressor has not said, you know what? I never thought of talking with my colleague in this situation. I have never thought to use those words with my partner. And they get excited in many, many situations because there's hope. Here are options. There are different ways that we can go through life and manage the way we think about things, our mindset. Really, the mindset you started with in the question, cognitive reappraisal, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most powerful stress reduction technique that is available to any of us. So, it seems simple, like, oh, yeah, of course, I would just sit and think of different ways. It doesn't work that way because we are habitual behaviors and thinkers.
Yeah. So it's important to outsource that. And
Yeah, I love that
I
word.
love
That's
that.
great.
Yeah, have other people do that, say that.
Yes. Yeah. So use, and in certainly in Western cultures, in other cultures as well, we're sort of instructed to deal with our stuff on our own, just, figure it out and try it. But this part of outsourcing, or not outsourcing really, but I would call it convening partners in your life, a group in your life that maybe knows you or even not, and coming up with these different ideas. It's brainstorming, and it's as if you were a team leader and you needed to figure out an issue that's, causing financial loss, causing problems with messaging. But you are the company. You are the person that needs all of the resources and smarts of others. I think a big mistake that I made with post brain tumor and dealing with my visual impairment was, and granted I was 10, 11, 12 years old, I did not get the help that I needed. I really, really shunned help and listening to different perspectives and asking for help when I needed it. So I really tried to get through all of that myself. And that is what added up to my eventual serious need for help when I got to college, as I talked about before.
That's a heavy load to carry on your own. And I think, when I said outsourcing, the idea is that other people are not emotionally attached as you are, and which
Yes.
allows creativity and it allows playfulness. And oftentimes people go like, playfulness? Yeah, but I'm stressed and I'm going through a crisis. What? Yes, playfulness.
Yes. Thank you for saying that, because when I do the mod squad, it's always a laugh, lots of laugh lines, because I invite people, this is important. Thank you for reminding me of this, that when I say to the mod squad, the people coming up with the ideas, don't worry about what anyone thinks of your suggestion. The sky is the limit, If you want to suggest, don't ever talk to this colleague again in your entire life. Yeah, that's not realistic, but it's okay, because what can happen is you could take a piece of an idea that someone has, a piece of the suggestion, and a piece of someone else's suggestion, and create your own
Exactly.
path forward, your own ideas. And this just can't come as smart as we are and as resourceful as we believe we are, and many of us are. You just can't do this kind of thing on.
True. So speaking of resources, living in circumstances where you're constantly exposed to stress, okay? And this is our focus today, like circumstances of stress. That can really erode and undermine your ability to trust yourself, but also to trust other resources and your ability to become resourceful. Okay, we know the impact that stress has on the body, on the brain, it wreaks havoc. So, how can we as coaches help our clients build confidence in their ability to rise beyond circumstances or identify circumstances or even gain clarity around the circumstances and the resourcefulness.
Yeah, Shiri, I sort of go back to something I said earlier about the
Mm.
stress breakdown. If I think, and I try to do this with my clients, where appropriate, where it makes sense, is to take small steps and then hopefully bank the small successes. And when we, or when, clients try something, even if they think at first, wow, I don't know if that's going to work, and then they have success with it, it makes them feel more confident and more trustworthy of these types of techniques, of the work that a coach is doing with them. I'll give a real life example. Not too long ago, I was working with a manager at a tech company, and one of his big stressors, was that he had a lot of meetings. That's sort of what he did all day, as he went from one meeting to another. And he always felt really stressed at the beginning of a meeting. And as a leader, when you come in stressed, when you come in hot, there's probably going to be some contagion, and other people in the room who may have felt really calm before they got there start to feel really stressed. And then, of course, you don't have the best communication. You don't get the problem solving that you want, all sorts of things, because everybody's stressed out because of you. So fortunately, he recognized that. But smart as he is, he couldn't really come up with a solution for that. So and he was really stressed by it. And what we ended up coming to sort of together as a coach-client team was that maybe he would shorten each meeting to 45 minutes or 50 minutes instead of 60. And he would take the 10 minutes from the end of one meeting to the beginning of the other to do quick calm, which I taught him, to take a little walk around the office or around the block outside of his building. Again, you may think, who would not think of this solution? I'll tell you something, a lot of people, because of that thinking, and he just wasn't
Exactly.
predisposed to even really thinking in this way. So little thing, not really a big solve all the problems kind of strategy, but he did it. And after a couple of times, I think he tried it a few times. Then the next session we had, he came back and you could see his face was less stressed. He was excited. He was, I couldn't wait to tell me about the success that he had with this. And it opened the door to him learning more, trying to figure out together other strategies he could use with other stressors. So an example of, building confidence and clarity and
Mm-hmm.
momentum and success by not taking on too much at once.
Yeah.
And remembering that stress reduction, anxiety reduction is often a lifelong process, because stressors come along all the time. As we've talked about, there are lots of surprises in our lives. Situations change. So people are impatient. People are more impatient today, thanks in great part to technology. But there's wisdom, and I think success in the long game of this, and building confidence and success and stress reduction in small steps.
So I love the small steps concept, and just, taking big circumstances and breaking them down. And that is this theme, that you've been kind of bringing to the table since we started this conversation. So you have offered us a lot of knowledge and a lot of tips and a lot of techniques. Is there something that you would like to offer in terms of a resilience building technique that you haven't addressed so far? One last thing that you want to offer and put in the space.
Wow, resilience building technique. I have so many of them. I do these things called challenges, and I have 365 of them, one for every day. It's not a book or anything like that. I do videos, and I do put them on, one of them on LinkedIn each week. You know what? Let me do one that I just did. It's just coming to mind. I think it connects with many of the things we've been talking about. We're in really stressful times. And, resilience builders, even if they're not going to solve the problems of the world, they are like the foundation of a house. And you can't build a house just on loose dirt. So you have to build up, strength, hold up the house to make sure it doesn't blow over in a storm or crumble during an earthquake. So the challenge that I just put out was about the resilience builder was about noting the good stuff. That's what it's called. Note the
So
good
important.
stuff.
So
And
important.
actually it's a piece of it's a strategy that I've been talking about for years, really for years. But I was reminded of it by a former Israeli hostage who said that he did this with fellow hostages while in captivity, noting a few good things that happened that day. Can you imagine anyone in any type of situation like that being asked to stop and say, okay, what's something good that happened today? So for those of us who, are in, let's say, regular life, at the end of each day, you can do this with somebody at home. You can do this with a friend, by yourself. What are a couple of things that happened today that were good? Was it a conversation that you had? Was it a kind thing that somebody did? Was it a meal? Was it a realization about something? Was it something you started on or something maybe you finished or made progress on? Note it down. Don't keep it up here because you'll forget it. Note it down on your phone, on a piece of paper, in a diary, whatever. And then in a very short amount of time, you'll have hundreds of good things to refer to when you are feeling low, when you're feeling that you need some hope, when you're feeling like I'm not making any progress. In fact, you probably will find progress in these good things that you've noted. And I am so not I apologize in advance to my California friends, California woo woo, light incense, sit cross-legged, all that stuff I mentioned before. And this, can be put in that category sometimes. Oh, just think of good things that happened to you and everything will be okay. It's not about that. It's about having a resilience builder to go to, not the whole answer, but a resilience builder to go to in certain situations. And I personally find it really helpful. And then because I was reminded of this on the news by this former hostage, I thought, I've got to talk about this again because I never thought about it. It's unimaginable to think about doing that in that type of situation. But if he and others in those situations can do that, we can do it too.
So true. And not judge, those events, like even small events, because sometimes we are searching for those big moments. Oh, something nice to drink, a nice sensation, a bath, small things. And I think it's more about being mindful and accepting that life is complex and not black and white.
And that it's not all negative, which I think in times like these, it can start to feel that way. And that really erodes the foundation that I talked about. It erodes our foundation. So I think we constantly need to be attentive to building our resilience and keeping it strong and try to get good sleep.
Yes,
Like
so
the
important.
most important resilience builder there is, because it's really hard to deal with stress when you're exhausted. And then when you're exhausted, you get even more stressed. So it's a really negative feedback loop. So if you need a place to start, can't think of anything else, start with sleep.
I agree. Jordan, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much. So, where can people find and learn more about you and what you do?
Best place to find me is my website. It's thestresscoach.com. thestresscoach.com, and has all of the types of, I call myself a chill factory and what I do. So it's more than speaking, it's more than being a podcast guest, it's training and courses.
Coaches need to know more about your training programs.
Thank you, since we have a lot of coaches on the line. So I've been doing this kind of work for a long time, as I talked about, incredibly 40 years. And I at some point, I realized, wait a second, yeah, I'm the stress coach, but I'm one guy in a world of 8.5 billion people, I think we're up to. So we need many, many, many more stress coaches, small s, small c, people who can teach some of the techniques that I teach to their clients, to their students, to their patients. I also work with healthcare providers. So I have a whole other part of my world, my work world, that is train the trainer, is teaching coaches how to teach some of these techniques, and again, healthcare providers. So I have a video a self-paced course called Stress Coach You, teaches these different techniques and how to teach them and how to incorporate them into your work as a coach, as well as some mentoring with me to make it work specifically for the type of work that you do as a coach or a teacher or a doctor. So yeah, thanks for letting me share that. That's on the website as well. And I'd be happy for anyone listening today to discount that if that would be helpful.
Well, we'll put on all the information we're going to have in the text below. Thank you for doing this work. And thank you for saying yes and being my guest. This was amazing. And guys, thank you for joining us today and listening to this episode. If you're a coach who wants to learn how to support your client through life's hardest challenges, tune into the next episodes and check us out on social media for additional content, information, and training, both personal and professional. Jordan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shiri. I really appreciate it. And thanks, everyone.
Bye.